Irrespective of your thoughts on the story of 2016's Batman vs. Superman, one thing that the entire fan base is almost in unanimous agreement over is that the warehouse fight scene is one of the best action sequences put to screen in a superhero film. But what exactly made this scene so iconic? So much so that millions of people have watched clips of this scene on YouTube in the years since the film's release. Zack Snyder's portrayal of Batman in his films has always been a highly controversial take on the character, with some absolutely loving it and wanting to see more films with this Batman, and others absolutely despising it, suggesting that the character is not a good interpretation. For me personally, Ben Affleck's Batman, commonly referred to as Batfleck, was an interpretation that I found very intriguing. In having an older Batman who has years of experience under his belt, I wanted to know more about his journey before where Batman vs. Superman picks up the story. In an age of superhero reboots, seeing an older and more established version of the character felt very fresh, especially at the time. I always felt that Batman vs. Superman would have worked better as a film if they had done a solo Batman film starring Ben Affleck prior to the team-up movie, as one of my issues with Batman vs. Superman was that it simply had too much ground to cover in a single film, causing all areas of the story to suffer. This is why I believe Man of Steel was the best of the Zack Snyder DC trilogy, as it was streamlined enough to build an inspiring and relatable hero in Kal-El, and the pacing never felt too rushed or chaotic. A solo Batman film would have given audiences a chance to get to know and understand this version of Batman, and some of the bolder choices, such as having Batman kill, would have likely been more accepted by fans if this was justified in the narrative. Now, I'm not saying that Batman should kill. I'm saying that a film about a Batman who has fallen from grace and lost his way would have made the story of Batman vs. Superman make more sense. I was also a big fan of the general aesthetic of Batman in this film. From the Batsuit to the Batmobile to the way the character is framed in shots, it feels like it was ripped straight from the pages of a comic book, and that's because it is. Snyder based many elements of the film on Frank Miller's 1986 graphic novel series, The Dark Knight Returns. This similarly features an older Batman at the tail end of his crime-fighting career, and shares many story elements, such as Batman fighting Superman in an armored suit, but it also alters a lot. And if you want to see a more faithful adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns, there's a 2-part animated film series which tells the story pretty much as it happened in the original graphic novel. So if you are a Batman fan, I highly recommend checking that out. The borrowing of the aesthetic of the comics is one of the reasons why many refer to Batfleck as one of the most comic booky interpretations of the character on screen, as visually he is designed and shot to look like how he does in the comics. One of my favourite shots from Batman vs. Superman is this one here, because it just feels so in line with the Batman aesthetic to me, and reminds me of this panel from Jim Lee's Batman Hush comic. In Batman vs. Superman, director Zack Snyder went as far as to replicate some of the shots almost exactly as they appear in The Dark Knight Returns, such as the ones I'm showing you on screen right now.
Drop it. I said drop it! I'll kill her! Believe me, I'll do it! I believe you.
But what exactly does all this have to do with why the warehouse fight is so popular? Well, the first element of why it works so well is because it fits the established visual style of the character. Through the variety of different on-screen adaptations of the character, there's a cinematic language of how this character is lit, framed, and moves on screen. From the goofy interpretation of Joel Schumacher's films to the gritty interpretation of Matt Reeves' The Batman, and everything in between, there's a consistent visual language throughout. This is best demonstrated in videos where all the different versions of Batman have been cut together. There's a particularly good one called Batman, Every Cinematic Batman Supercut by the YouTube channel Full Fat Videos, which I recommend if you're looking to see this for yourself. When you see the shots of all the different adaptations cut together, you'll probably see what I mean by this idea of the cinematic language of Batman. Whether you like Batman vs Superman or not, it's hard to argue against the point that this film adheres to that language. And in the warehouse fight, be it the shot of him crashing in through the window or him taking out waves of enemies like in the Batman Arkham games, that established visual language is adhered to throughout the scene. And in adhering to the established visual language of the character, it helps cement this scene into being as memorable as it is. Secondly, we have the action sequence itself. The reason why it works is because it has so many layers to it and it never stays the same for too long. Now, have you ever watched an action scene before and got bored? If so, the chances are the reason that you got bored was because the scene stagnated and became repetitive. One of the key components to great action is to keep the audience on their toes as to what happens next. As soon as an action sequence becomes repetitive, the audience starts to know what to expect and switches off. This scene is a perfect blend of different elements. We start with Batman crashing through the floor and using gadgets from above to disarm enemies, before dropping down and fighting enemies at a more distant range. As the intensity of the scene builds, the fight becomes progressively more close quarters. The scene never stays in the same part of the warehouse for too long either. He's never fighting the same enemy for too long, and he isn't even using the same move on every enemy. Each one he takes down in different and creative ways. This scene is a brilliant blend of Batman's tactical skills and his raw brute strength. We also get the sense that at any point he can be taken down. In this scene, Batman gets hit, stabbed, and even gets shot in the back of the head. If not for the armor, he'd be dead there. What this shows is that ultimately he's not invulnerable, which adds further stakes and intensity to the scene. Had he never taken a hit throughout the whole scene, the scene would have lacked any dramatic depth. So having him make mistakes and get hit plays a huge role in why this scene is able to create the tension that it does. The action scene was clearly very well planned as well. Most action sequences during the pre-production phase of a film's development go through what's called a previs, short for pre-visualization. This is where the stunt performers, and sometimes the actors as well if they're performing the stunts themselves, will go through the stages of choreographing and rehearsing the scene. This is an essential phase, as if this is done well, it makes the shoot flow a lot more smoothly, and not only has the choreography been predetermined, but the placement of the cameras has been too. Camera placement also plays a pivotal role in what makes an action sequence good. The wrong angle can be the difference between selling and not selling a punch, between making the sequence easy for the audience to follow along with and impossible to understand. The better this is planned out in pre-production, when production begins shooting the scene, it becomes substantially easier. This warehouse fight went through extensive pre-production, and that really shows in the final product. Much of this scene was shot practically too. As you can see from these behind-the-scenes shots, this was not done on a green screen. In fact, by the looks of it, the only CGI extensions to the scene are the muzzle flashes on the guns and Batman's cape, which makes sense as capes are notoriously difficult to perform stunts in. Just ask Chris Hemsworth. Because so much of this scene was shot practically, what this means is that this won't age poorly, as CGI-heavy scenes often do. Practical filmmaking has a timeless quality to it, and it's why I'm sure this scene will be just as well loved in 30 years' time as it is now. It already is, almost a decade on from when it was first released. Overall then, this scene is so iconic because of how excellently crafted it is, both in terms of its visuals and in terms of how the sequence is designed to keep the audience engaged. I would say to date that this is still the best Batman action sequence we've ever had on screen so far. The Batman had some pretty good ones, but they were much shorter and less layered in comparison to this one. So for the time being, the warehouse fight reigns supreme. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And if you're interested in seeing more videos on your favourite movies and shows, please do like and subscribe for more if you wouldn't mind doing so. Thank you.